and the link for that is on the agenda. And with that, let's do our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chairperson Jan Clark-Kretz.
Here.
Bonnie London.
Here.
Tim Underko. AJ Moyer. Jean Wilson.
Here.
Beth Cohen.
Here.
Randy Elder.
Here.
Was that a here from Randy?
Yes, he's here.
Okay, and auxiliary member Ramona Brockman
Here.
and auxiliary member Greg Abranovich.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, now is the time for committee comment for items not on the agenda. Anybody on our committee have anything they'd like to discuss not on the agenda? How about members of the public? Any member of the public want to discuss any items not on the agenda?
Yes.
You gotta speak into the microphone, otherwise they can't hear you.
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm the pastor at Sierra Christian Church here in Loomis. We're located on Rockland Road, just before Barton Road. And I had the privilege of being at the town hall meeting last night and had some discussions with people there and was encouraged to come today to kind of let this committee know some things that our congregation would like to be able to move forward in doing. We have been in discussions with California Christian Homes, which is a nonprofit organization. They build and they manage low income or affordable senior housing communities. These are not assisted livings. These are independent residents for seniors who fall under the very low and the lower income ratings for the state. And we recognize that we have, we're zoned as a residential estate. And so we recognize we're limited by that zoning. And while we are in conversations with California Christian Home, we also know that zoning can be an issue that just stops us right from the get-go. And so I'm wanting to get some feedback from Loomis leaders to know if that's going to be a complete roadblock for us. What this building would be is we can develop this building to match the needs of the community as well as Loomis's leadership's desire, meaning they can be single story, they could be 2-story, they could be multi-story. We could do as few as 25 units, as many as 85 units. Again, it helps meet Loomis's requirement for affordable housing. This is senior affordable housing, so it has less impact on the infrastructure of the town because families are not involved. It would be for 62 and older. Again, that would meet the requirement for those lower brackets of income. It is managed by California Christian Homes. They started in California, but they own and manage properties nationwide. And so their staff comes in and manages. They provide services, whether it's financial, medical, emotional support, transportation for the residents that live in that community. And so I bring that before you today for your consideration as you think about planning and use of land and meeting those requirements that we need to do. We need this for the members of our community. I don't know that there's any affordable senior housing in Loomis at this time, and there's a desperate need for it. And we as a community would love, we have this huge lot in front of our church that goes unused, and what a better place to build housing. But we would need the support in making some changes to that zoning for that piece of land so that we could move forward and work with the town on what that development would look like, how large it would be. So I bring that before you today for consideration.
Thank you. And how big is your property?
Our property is 5 acres. We currently have on the top portion of the property, we have an organic garden. We grow for Placer County Food Bank and other smaller food banks within Placer County. We also have a Head Start school on the church property. And then our sanctuary, it's kind of still a rural type setting. The sanctuary is actually an old barn that was converted. So you may have seen it. It's the red barn up on the hill.
What's the address there?
5645 Rockland. It is right down the street across the street from us at the corner of Sierra College Boulevard and Rockland we recognize that that's the city of Rockland, but they're building that multi-story apartment complex on the corner there. We are literally right up the street, quarter of a mile on the left-hand side of Rockland Road.
When would you be able to start building?
It's a process. We have to go through all of the infrastructure issues. What California Christian Homes says is once they have a congregation that says, yes, our intent is to use the land, they will then move forward with representatives from the township to see, what needs to be done in getting the zoning corrections, permits needed, present the plans. They take care of all of that. And what they tell us is it could be a 3 to 5 year process between the time you begin and you're completed. So
That's about right.
yeah. And they're the organization that does handle that. As a pastor, that's not my thing. It's our congregation. That's not our strength. But California Christian Homes, I brought a brochure if anybody's interested in looking at it. They own many of the properties, and that is something that the congregation can consider, is do they sell a portion of it to California Christian Homes and let them own that property, build on it, or do we lease the property to them for the building? But again, they own property across the nation. They co-own and manage some properties that they did not build or that they don't own.
Hi, Randy Elder here.
Hi,
The
Randy.
question, you mentioned about the housing for seniors, geared towards seniors,
Yes.
and is it primarily going to be for low-income seniors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the state has categories of what they call low income or affordable. And California Christian Home usually works with the 2 lower brackets of income. And that income, of course, changes for each geographical area. So I don't know what the percentage is for Loomis. They will gather that information and they will make sure. I know some concerns were raised at the meeting last night that sometimes Loomis has entered into these agreements for affordable housing, and then the affordable aspect of it gets pulled after building. That is not what California Christian Homes does. Their whole mission is to do affordable housing.
The property would still be owned by the church, correct?
It could be, or that's something that we would negotiate with California Christian Homes, whether we continue to maintain ownership of the land and they build and they manage it. That's completely up to the congregation and California Christian Homes. They do it either way.
But the idea is that the residents do not own the property.
No, they will rent it.
Okay.
Correct. So they would either be renters from Sierra Christian or renters from California Christian Home, however we decide to make that legal partnership.
Yeah, I have a question. So the population that you're going to be served will be most primarily like Loomis residents or in surrounding area, statewide?
Those are things that we could put into the agreement with California Christian Homes. I mean, I think it's a need that Loomis has for
Right.
its residents. But, you know, it could be made available for whoever needs that. If we don't have that much of a need right now or draw in Loomis, which I can't
Then
believe
you
we
go
wouldn't,
outside.
then we would go outside to surrounding.
But you probably start with Loomis residents.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, California Christian Homes wants to work with the town's infrastructure,
Yeah.
with you guys to build build into the vision that you have, not come in with their own agenda.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Any other committee members have any questions?
I had a comment, Jean.
Go ahead,
This
Jean.
this property does already have both sewer and piped water as well as their ditch water. So they do have city services there.
That's great. Thank you. Anybody else on our committee have any questions?
This is Bonnie. I guess my question is to Mark. Have we found that 2.2 acres or shortfall of units that we still need to rezone for?
The answer to that is no. We have several ideas that have come from a couple of the committees, but no, we have not located that site.
Okay. Would this be something that we would take back to the subcommittee for Sierra College? Or I'm sorry, for the southwest portion of?
At this point, it would need to go directly to the umbrella committee because all of the other committees, I believe, are completed. So it can be done, Bonnie. I'm just saying that committee's no longer sitting, but the umbrella committee can certainly consider it.
Okay, thank you.
And Sean?
Yeah, we spoke about this at the thing last night as well. I think the fact that our housing element has a program that says within 3 years we need to find that additional 2.4 or 2.2 acres, whatever the number is, this is a candidate for that. And it would be, I think the best way to move forward would be for you to probably just send me or Mary Beth an email kind of reiterating what you want to do. And then we'll start looking at it and figure out how to do it. If we do it as part of the housing element and fulfilling that program, it's going to make it much easier to do it rather than having to process a separate general plan amendment and zoning amendment, all that. We might have to do that anyway, but it'll make it easier if the town kind of facilitates it rather than not. So, I mean, I think you're hearing from the committee that, you know, it's something that we would look at for sure, and that we should probably consider, because the biggest need in this community that we've heard is senior housing, affordable senior housing, and having somebody that wants to build that is obviously a good thing for us. So,
And I'd like to invite any committee members on November 17th. We're having our board meeting at 6:30 in the evening, and it is by Zoom. And Don Stump, who is one of the representatives of California Christian Homes, is going to be providing our board with more information. So that might be a wonderful opportunity too for committee members to be able to get additional information from California Christian Homes, what their process is. And I know Jean is familiar with this process and familiar with California Christian Homes.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming down here.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. This is a really exciting project. I'm very, very glad we had you yesterday. And
Absolutely. Thank you for encouraging me to come today.
yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is Jean again. I have not looked at their website for a good number of years, but I was very impressed when I did look at California Christian Homes with what they do, and also with Don Stump, whom I've met in the past as well. So if anyone can attend that and hear what Don Stump has to say, or look up the website, I presume it's probably still there for you if it was there a decade ago. I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Are your meetings recorded for future viewing?
We can. We don't normally do it, but we can record.
Bonnie, did you have something?
Yes, please. Mary Beth, could you get the information about the meeting and then send that out to the land use committee, and also I guess some of the subcommittee members for that area, and maybe even the Housing Element Committee.
My recommendation would be to send it to all the land use subcommittees and the umbrella committee. In, you know, in my thought, rather than doing one church property, I know there's another church property that was looking at doing affordable type housing on their parcel. But I would like to kind of do a deeper dive into the other church properties. I know the one at King and I-80, they would love to do something like that. So if we're gonna entertain this going forward, I think it would only be fair to open it up for all religious church groups and their locations.
That sounds great, but it would be nice to hear more about the nonprofit that is going to be managing.
Yeah, the California Christian Homes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth.
You betcha.
All right. Any other comments for items not on the agenda? Members of the public? All right, hearing and seeing none. Is there a motion to accept today's agenda?
I so move.
Okay, Randy, you moved. Is there a second?
Second from Jean.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Bonnie London,
Yes,
Jean Wilson,
Yes.
Beth Cohen,
Yes.
Randy Elder.
Randy, yes, if you couldn't hear him. Now we will go to the consent agenda. Is there any comments, either public or with our committee regarding our consent agenda? And if not, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Randy moved. Is there a second? Can somebody second the motion if they like?
Wake up.
Hello?
Anybody there?
Jean will, if nobody else did.
Okay, Jean, thank you. Roll call, please.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Bonnie London,
yes,
Jean Wilson,
Yes.
Beth Cohen,
Yes.
and Randy Elder.
Yes.
All right, moving right over to committee matters. Mary Beth.
So thank you all for being here today. We're going to pick up where we left off on October 19th, and I'll turn the helm over to Mark King from Placeworks as your technical staff.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And I'm going to deflect any conversation right to Christy so we can dive into that most exciting and wonderful document called the glossary.
Yes, so let me share my screen. We can get started. Can you see that? Okay. Okay, so we left off at lot or parcel. Were there any comments on lot or parcel?
That whole section looks good to me, that page.
Okay. I will keep scrolling. So we have lot area. Do we want to say that it is exclusive of the adjacent dedicated streets right of way? I know that there are a number of areas where the parcel includes the street. So for example, Diaz, there are parcels that go all the way into the street or all the way to the complete opposite side of the street. So I think there might be some benefit of leaving that language in, but please let's dive in if you think that if you have a different opinion.
it's also the case on a lot of places on the south side, Barton Road, Brace Road. I know in Brace that unless we get a dedication like we did from the Methodist Church, theirs did go all the way across the street. Most of us here on Barton, we go to the center line of the road. So they're why would we want to or not exclude those parts of the lot area?
I hate to be pedantic here, but if it's a lot line, then the lot line either extends into the street and you have an easement, or it doesn't. And so the gross area is within the lot lines. Now, if we're going to start subtracting roadways, then we now have a net lot. We don't have a gross lot. And so that's the difference between the two. So anyway.
You're right, Mark. It doesn't fit with that. It doesn't fit with the term gross, does it?
Right. So let's strike it.
Take it out.
Okay. Looks good.
Anybody disagree with that?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, moving on. Lot coverage is the same as site coverage, which we will go over to that later. Lot depth through lot line or property line. Any comments on that?
And committee, just go ahead and speak up just in terms of timeliness. I think it's best just to operate on if anybody disagrees, speak up. Otherwise, it'll just take forever.
Right. Right. Jump in right away or else I will keep moving on.
Okay, I have the comment. I'd sent one in on lot, if we're moving down to front lot line.
Yes.
Because we have, again, the situation, unless it's already been changed. It's the line separating the parcel from the street. However, a number of places out here in the country, the lot line does not separate the parcel from the street. We either go halfway or across the street. So maybe we can leave that and then add something like, or as recorded on the parcel map, or it even more.
Or might I propose separating the parcel street or roadway easement? Would that suffice?
Yeah.
Jean's absolutely right
So
on that.
it's
I'm sure there's like those.
the property line separating the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. It can't be a property line at the roadway easement. You're absolutely right, Jean.
How does that work though, Mark?
It doesn't. No, you're right. That can't work, Christy. So yeah, so the separating the parcel from the street, or we'd have to create another lot line separating the edge of the roadway easement. Oh, that's interesting.
So my suggestion was just to add or as recorded on the parcel map.
Yeah, I like that, Gene, and it's really nice and clean. The difficulty, of course, is we don't always have access to the parcel maps. Recorded ones anyway, but that works. That works for a definition. If somebody's going to get that pedantic, we can look it up. I'll go back to sleep now. Gene's right again. Darn it. Always right.
No, not always. Not always.
Okay. So anyone else? If not, I'm moving on. So lot of record.
I need to get some papers. I'll be back.
Through loudness. Any comments there?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. So low impact development, I had a previous definition there and Mark sent me a very concise one. So I have changed that and used his. I like it. It fits all of the marks for low impact development and doesn't go on and on for multiple lines.
Good. Good.
Okay.
That's good.
Low income area, we removed this last section that's too detailed. And then maintenance services, client site services. Do you want to include all these details that are down here, or should we strike that to be simply stating base facilities for various businesses that provide services on the premises of their clients?
Well, one value of the examples is that it does provide some guidance to people down the road, a little more clarity. Maybe it helps them. I'm all for leaving it in. Just keep it. That'd be my recommendation.
Mary Beth, have you needed to use that?
Not specifically, because the allowed uses within any zone would kind of dictate that. But I have no problem leaving it in just for clarification.
Okay. If anybody
My request would be to clarify whether it is an exhaustive list or not by saying includes, but is not limited to.
Not limited, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
All right. Moving on, mandatory element, just simplifying and cutting off this extra part that's listing things out, just stating a component of the general plan mandated by state law. It's short and sweet. And then going on to manufacturing, processing, heavy. This gets very lengthy. It keeps going. I'll scroll down so you can see it goes on and on. This type of heavy manufacturing isn't really allowed in Loomis. So do we really need to keep all of those definitions?
I was wondering the same thing. Do we want to shorten it and basically, and then say these are not allowed in Loomis somehow? Just to give people the idea, don't bother.
Right, maybe we keep this part here.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment? If not, we will strike all that excess.
Or at the most, just list the things that are in black and not try to describe all of them so that they know, but maybe we don't need to put any of it, but at least that would give them an idea of don't bother with these things.
In some ways, I'm just going to interject here. There have been times that people come in and the not allowed list is actually pretty important because it gives us a spot to do. And I don't know that we need to list all of them, but it comes back often as saying, well, you can't say that I can't do this. And I have had to pull up various ideas of this when people come in with a building permit. So I understand we don't need to have probably everything there, and maybe a smaller list under each bold, but using Andrea's idea of including but not limiting, and then just a couple of them.
Okay, as a zoning code author, I need to weigh in here for my.
No, that's true. It could be if it's listed really well in the zoning, not necessarily in the general plan.
It is. All this is from the code.
So as long as we can in the planning world have a place to say, see, this definition is not allowed. And that's in the zoning code. That's great. If it doesn't need to be in the general plan, that's
well,
super understandable.
Yeah. Andy's told us that this will be a single glossary for both the zoning code and the general plan. My concern is that it's not an exhaustive list, and that this is regulatory, it's not definitional. if you're going to prohibit it, let's have a prohibited list of prohibited uses in the zoning code, in the specific regulatory piece that we deal with. But I don't want to die on this hill either. So if the town wants to keep it here, and it's not the end of the world, it's just we traditionally don't look to the definitions for regulation, and this is regulation.
Makes sense to me. As long as I think probably as long as we in the world in the planners world know that there's a place to go, whether it's there or if it's in the zoning regulations, then that makes probably more sense.
So Carol, did you say you did go to the general plan though to get?
I've looked because I've gone to the definitions, and this is what the definition is like. Sorry, see folks, I can tell you right here, it's not allowed. And they're like, well, sure, show it to me. And I send it to them. And that's kind of their bottom line. And it doesn't necessarily have to be here if it is in fact listed someplace. But I hate to have a loophole in open up.
Part of what we've run into is that we have to look to both the zoning and the general plan to be sure that we've found everything that might be relevant. So I'm supportive of making this a bit more general. And then, as Mark described, having a list of prohibited uses when we get to drafting the zoning code.
Perfect.
I just looked it up, and your definition as listed here is already in your zoning code.
Yep.
So
That's where this
it's
is.
identical.
I would recommend that what you do is in the definition, you reference the location of those specific sub definitions. So that way they know that it does exist somewhere and where it is.
Okay, so maybe I will just make a list with commas saying may include chemical product manufacturing, concrete, gypsum, etc., and then see zoning code.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. So
Oh, it is in the zoning code because we have an interim period between the general plan being approved and modifications or amendments of the zoning code. So in that interim period, it will be still in the zoning code. Is that correct?
yes,
It's in both?
it's there now, so
Okay,
it'll still be there in that in-between time.
so it'll stay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, same thing with manufacturing, processing, intensive. We can do the same thing where just some of these examples in bold are shown, but we don't go into this much detail.
And
I
just for the
concur.
committee's reference, the first definition we looked at was lists of things we were excluding, and these are things that we are not. These are things that we are accepting, correct?
Right, these are things that would be allowed. But again, you don't need to go into so much detail at this level. And again, same thing. Manufacturing, processing, light.
Jumping back up to the previous one. We've got heavy, we've got light, and then we've got something in the middle that we call intensive. Is there maybe a better term than intensive that we can use for medium? Because I know I've had the conversation with Mary Beth. Which one is more intense? Is it intensive or is it heavy? It's a little bit confusing to have intensive in there.
Maybe moderate.
Well,
Yeah.
We have two land use designations for industry. Do we just want to stick with two definitions and just fold them where they need to go? We have industrial light, and then we have industrial. I just wonder if having three separate definitions, but only two designations. And I apologize, I didn't look up the zoning code. Do we have three different industrial zones too?
No, there's only
No.
two. So I like your ideas. We define two industrial zones, but then as Andrea said, we list what things are not used in, allowed in those zones as the uses or potential uses. So I definitely would take this down to the two, the light and the Well,
Well,
anyway,
really, the first one just does not, it's not allowed. So it kind of
right.
doesn't apply anywhere.
We really only do the two, what we call intensive and light is really or
Right.
whatever that third one is. So
Right.
the heavy is not allowed in the town. So,
I would remove the definition and put that in a list of uses not allowed within the town as part of the zoning code list.
It makes sense.
Anybody disagree with that?
Nope.
Would we want to just put here the word and just say these uses are not allowed?
I would just not list them.
Right.
If they're not
Do that-
there, they're not
Do that
allowed.
in the zoning code. List,
Yeah.
have a list of uses not allowed in the zoning code.
and it could be listed as something along the line, heavy manufacturing is not allowed within the town of Loomis, and list what that is referred to.
Okay. So here I will just list the bold items and reference the code, and then the same with light.
And then leaving the intensive and the.
Yeah, leaving intensive as it, pretty much as is, just removing all these extra details because they're still in the code.
Our definition for light industrial says this designation is not intended for heavy industrial. And so I think that's the point of this definition. Correct? And then we just removed it?
Yeah, the heavy, we're going to just remove that completely.
But I don't think we should remove it if we talk about it in the general plan. I think we need a definition when you talk about it.
So that brings up a different point of when we make these definitions, are we stating things in the positive of what they are, or are we trying to define them in the negative by what they are not?
Well, the first one was what they were not, and the next two are what they are.
The first one defines what they are, and we just said you're not allowed to do it. It's saying a heavy industrial includes chemical production, I can't read it, concrete production, glass production. That's the definition. And then it above it says you're not allowed to do it. I personally think it needs to remain in there when we reference heavy industrial within the general plan.
And something to consider is that these are made up labels.
This is general
There's
plan.
nothing real about heavy or light. These are just something that planners are using as terms. When we list them in the zoning code, it simply says the following industrial uses are not permitted. And then it would list chemical, alkali, anything along concrete and all that good stuff that's in there.
So go to the land use definition of light industrial. Does it still say this is not designated for heavy industrial use? And if it does, if it's still in there, then I think you need to describe what we mean by heavy industrial.
And I would agree with that. A brief statement, which kind of goes over again the performance standards of heavy industrial. And then what we do is further in the zoning code, list some of these specifics, but the definition shouldn't be this frigging long. I would keep it simple. And Christy, use exactly the term from the general plan, heavy industrial.
Hang on. Getting there. So we call it limited industrial.
And at the end of it, it used to say, there was a last sentence, this designation is not intended for heavy industrial use. Is that still part of our land use definition?
Still says that, so you were right. If we're going to keep that phrase in there, then it needs to be defined. But I still contend you don't want to list all this stuff there. But again, this isn't
So just a simple definition on heavy industrial to be consistent. And then if we need to, let's look at listing these in the zoning code to be specific what's prohibited.
Got it.
In the definition, I would still leave out the
That's
heavy
under light.
manufacturing uses are not allowed within the town of Loomis, because that gets back into regulation rather than defining.
Do you want me to strike this?
Yeah, I would strike that part.
Okay.
The statement that it's not intended for heavy industrial use is at the end of light industrial, not limited industrial.
You are correct.
Maybe I misheard somebody.
Yeah, I think it was me because I was mumbling while I was scrolling through the document.
Okay.
Beth is correct, though. It is in there, and as such, it should be defined in some ilk.
Okay. So
In that notion, when we look at manufacturing, we just changed the manufacturing heavy. Should we change these manufacturings to light industrial and industrial instead of manufacturing processing light?
I think what we'll wind up with, though, is on the light industrial, confusing that with the designation.
Yeah, okay.
We have a couple comments, and I think Miguel had a question. I think I saw that first.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Thank you. This one here, clothing and fabric product manufacturing, does this mean somebody can't make clothes?
No, we're just reducing the amount of detail in the general plan definition. This is still in the zoning code. So all these details are still there. We're just shortening this up to be more concise for the general plan.
And then a little further down, if you scroll down just a little bit, there's a company on the corners of King and Swetzer that makes metal vents. And I thought I saw here somewhere where it doesn't allow the manufacture of metal vents.
How long has that business been there? Were they grandfathered in, or would it have been?
No, they've been there only about 8 or 10 years. It used to be a Hostess bakery store.
Oh, yeah.
And they make metal vents that go in your houses and things of that nature. They manufacture them there.
So that would be something under intensive.
And it's covered under item 3, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Intensive is allowed. What we took out was the heavy. And so all those uses Miguel listed under processing intensive do have a spot in our IL zone. It's the ones up in the upper definitions that were listed under heavy that were the ones that are not allowed within the town of Loomis. And it states that kind of in several different spots. So everything that you're looking at from line 13 down, they do have a spot where they're allowed within our town.
Okay,
In
because
one of the industrial zones.
across the street, they manufacture aircraft exhaust systems also.
And what I'll be doing is just listing these items in bold after each number. And just those will still stay. I'll just get rid of all the excess detail. They'll still be in the zoning code. Just from this, they'll be gone.
So those will be allowable uses then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Eva had a question about stick
Well,
out.
kind of the same topic, and it was more of a clarification that I'm sorry, it's a stick out. It's the strikeouts is what we're going to eliminate from the general plan, but then define in the zoning, carry those definitions over.
Right. They're already there. So these are taken from the zoning definitions and put in here. And now we're just going to pare them down.
Okay, so I just wanted to confirm that. And then will those definitions be reevaluate at that time as to what is allowed and not allowed?
Right, that'll be part of the separate subsequent process from the general plan update to then update the code.
Okay. And just FYI, I hear those guys at 11:30 at night with their machinery running, stamping out stuff.
And let's be clear that these are not going to be in the zoning quote definition or definitions, since this glossary has all the definitions, but they will be listed and described in the zoning code as either acceptable or non-acceptable uses. So it's really not a definition when it's in the zoning code. It's part of the code, permitted or not permitted uses.
Okay, so it'll be like an exhibit, whatever, that will list all those.
Correct.
Okay.
There'll be an expansion of the table of allowed uses.
Right. Okay. And I have to go, so I will see everyone later.
Bye, Anders. Thank you.
Bye,
Yep.
Andy.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so I think we are all good with those. Anyone else before I go on to MAP Act? Okay, so looking at MAP Act through median strip, one change was just to simplify marsh as an area periodically or permanently covered with shallow water, either fresh or saline sea wetland. So we do have a definition for wetland, and that would provide a little more detail on what a marsh is. And then I'm not hearing any objections. So medical services, clinic, urgent care. This is just another case of simplifying it so that we don't have all these details which are already in the code. And that also goes for medical services, doctor office, and medical services extended care. So hearing no comment, I'll keep going. It also applies to medical services hospital. And then on merger, there's an elimination of that last sentence. The merging district's territory must be totally included inside the city. We can get rid of that. And then the next one.
I'm sorry, I was looking for I was looking for my notes from this morning, and I took on all this stuff and I can't find them. But one was on the simple word may.
Mm-hmm.
And it's defined as that, I think, I'm not looking at it here, but that which is permissible.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to figure out, does that mean that it's permitted? Yes, you can, or yes, you might be able to, because when I look it up, you get that can be either of those definitions, and it makes a difference if we say something is permitted, yes, you can do it, or yes, it's permissible under the right conditions if, we have strings attached. So what do we mean here? What do we mean by permissible? Do we mean, yes, it's permitted, like when it's in the permitted box on a chart, a table, or do we mean, well, it's permissible, it might be permissible? What do we mean?
Can we get the
Do we need to
legal?
be concerned? It's just if somebody comes and says it says it's permissible, I can do it, and we say, well, it depends. Does it matter here or not?
Andreas?
So for purposes of the definitions, we're trying to get away from establishing regulations. As far as the permissible, the conditionally permitted, the not permitted, I think we need to be perhaps clearer in our zoning to make it clear that that is the place we go to look for what is permitted, what is conditionally permitted, and what is not permitted. I don't think that we're giving away the farm by saying something is allowed here. Instead, I think we would look at what is set out as allowed here is kind of enabling us to then get more granular with it in the zoning code, is making it either a conditionally permitted or a permitted use in whichever land use or in whichever zone.
Okay,
We could change it to
back-
possible.
back to where you were.
You could just change it to possible, that
No,
which is possible.
I
I don't
that's-
think that helps really, because that would become even more arguable. Let's just probably leave it.
Okay.
I was going that which may be permissible.
Hey.
There you go.
That's actually pretty good. Or I was thinking maybe.
Yeah, I think a good thing there to think about is that the policy itself should either use a shall if it's something that you have to do versus something that has more wiggle room. Okay, so metropolitan, this was already in the glossary, but do we need to include that? Loomis is not a metropolitan area.
And this isn't anywhere else in the general plan? There's this word?
Not in the sense of talking about things in Loomis, or, I mean, it might be in an agency or organization's name, but other than that, I don't think it's in there in reference to Loomis.
Would that go along with the MTP?
Is it in there in
Yes, yeah. So, for example, it might be in a document title or organization's title, but it's not in reference to Loomis itself. And those titles might not be referencing necessarily a metropolitan in the sense that this definition would cover that. You know, or that might be talking about a group of cities or an area.
Yeah, I think a word like metropolitan is generic enough
is it in,
that it doesn't even really need to be there. If somebody runs across it, they can just look it up in the dictionary and we'll defer to that definition, rather than putting it in there just because we use it in our language. There's a lot of words in our documents that we don't have in our own glossary.
Right.
And if people stumble on it, they can look it up in the dictionary.
As long as that word's not in our general plan, I don't see why it should be there. Yeah. And as long as you've done a search of the general plan for that
is it in
word,
the settings?
it's not anywhere?
I'll do a search, and if it's not there anywhere
the
when we have
settings?
our final version, then I will delete it.
Yep, sounds good.
Miguel suggested we take out the word important. And I kind of like that because that's very subjective and judgmental.
It is judgmental. That's funny.
Whoever drafted that clearly liked the large cities, I guess.
Okay.
So while we were talking about metropolitan, I went and looked up may in Black's Law Dictionary, and it says to be a possibility. Is that something that the committee likes better than what we have up there?
I like that better, actually. What about you, Jean? You're the one who brought it up.
That, I like that better. It doesn't confuse permitted and permissible.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. Done.
Thank you, legal team.
So the first definition in there is actually to be permitted, but the second definition is to be a possibility. And I think that fits better with what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So moving on. We did metropolitan microclimate. The change here was just to delete this last part. where, yes, they can be favorably altered with landscaping and design features. Do we need to say that?
I don't think anybody's disagreeing with you there.
Okay. And moving on, mineral resource.
Delete.
Also just simplifying this so that we don't go into the State Division of Mines and Geology reference and all that. So just saying land on which known deposits of commercially viable mineral or aggregate deposits exist. Short and sweet.
Makes sense.
Okay. Ministerial administrative decision. So right now we have an action taken by a governmental agency that follows established procedures and rules and does not call for the exercise of judgment in deciding whether to approve a project. So this can be more typically defined as an act performed in a, here, I can't see my own screen, in a prescribed manner and in obedience to a legal authority without regard to one's own judgment or discretion. Do you have a preference between either of those or an edit to either of them that you would like to see?
I believe the one in your comment box comes out of state law.
Yeah, I like the one in the comments better.
Okay. Okay. So then some other items that were more recently added were just definitions for mitigation measure, mitigated negative declaration. So these are just basic definitions of what those are. If there's no objections, I will keep moving on to mixed use, which I think will have maybe some objections. So one change is to say a development that includes more than one land use, either in a single building or within such as office, commercial, institutional, and residential, either in a single building or within a defined project area, as an integrated development project with significant functional interrelationships and a coherent physical design.
It's kind of wordy.
I think what that really is define what we typically mean by a mixed use project. But then we do have areas that we specify that it is in one building.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we specify it's in mixed use structure, but this really seems to describe, since it's describing a development, it seems to be describing what we would basically is the mixed use project. Do we need both those definitions or are they different somehow?
I think project is just more general, but we do use that term, mixed use project.
And isn't the difference mixed use project and mixed use structure? Didn't we already have a discussion about how it could be a store in the front and then a separate residence in the back versus all in one building?
Right.
So they are different.
They are. Yeah. So we have three different items that talk about mixed use. One is just talking about what is mixed use, then what constitutes a project, and then what is a structure, a mixed use structure. So not everything needs to be a mixed use structure.
Right. Right.
So this probably gets to all the things that we've discussed, I think.
I think so.
Mhm. Is Sean here? Sean, what do you think? Well, all three. Is that helpful, not helpful?
Sorry, I think maybe the only thing that you might want to put is mixed use structure. You might want to say on the same lot to make it, just to make it clear that you can't have a mixed use structure. You can't say that multiple lots is a mixed use structure.
So maybe a structure or building on one lot.
Yeah. Because then if it's spread over two different lots and you're getting into a mixed use project versus a mixed use structure, and that's come up.
Okay.
We don't require a lot line adjustment when there's a structure that crosses a lot. We actually have structures that have are placed on two different lots.
We shouldn't have structures that are on multiple lots. I think that's what Sean's trying to get at by specifying that a mixed-use structure would have to be on a single lot.
Right. There's been discussion from folks about having the definition of a mixed use structure be applied in like a subdivision. So they're building a mixed use structure, but with multiple structures, not one vertical or horizontal structure. So just to like clear it up and make sure everybody understands it's on one lot, it's not a subdivision, or it's not multiple lots being kind of like, back to back and considering that a mixed use structure. I think it's just a clarification thing that has frankly just come up a couple times, and it's better to make sure it's clear than not.
So then wouldn't the definition be a single structure or single building with more than one type? I'm just confused by the idea of
we have a
one lot.
structure or building housing more than one type.
What's that?
So we are defining it as a single building or structure that houses more than one type of use for mixed use structure.
I don't see single in there. Am I?
It's the A at the start of it.
A structure.
Okay,
A
so then I
structure,
don't
not structures or
understand.
buildings.
If it is a single structure, a structure cannot be built across two lots. Well, I don't care. You know what? I don't care.
Okay. Anyone else?
Kim?
Hi there. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
For the mixed use, here's my comments. I wonder if it's appropriate to make sure that we include something along the lines where it includes commercial or retail element. Because when I think of mixed use, I think of, as the comments have already been made, live work, or perhaps residential / commercial. And I don't know if I see anything referencing that relationship. Or there it is. So it is. Okay, such as commercial or office and residential use. So is it appropriate to add retail there, or is retail considered also commercial? That's my question.
I think that would be considered commercial. And then if you look at mixed use, it's a little more detailed, listing office, commercial, institutional, and residential.
Okay. So retail falls under the commercial definition. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, moving on to mobile home. So Mark gave me a very good definition from the California Code of Regulations, which is more concise, and we don't need to go on for 10 lines. So it's just getting rid of the excess detail and talking about what's considered a mobile home. So permanent chassis without a permanent foundation, connection to utilities.
So Christie, is the first paragraph, is that pretty much acceptable language in the building industry?
So the first part that's highlighted here
Right.
is from the California Code of Regulations.
I say
That's-
why not run with it?
What was that?
I say why not run with that and then leave everything else out?
Okay. So what's been deleted is the previous definition. Okay. If there's no other comment, I will keep going. Okay, so for
There
mobile
was a
home
comment in the chat, I think, on that last one.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Somebody in the chat?
From
It
Eva.
looks like Eva.
Is a body foot? Oh.
In the definition, what is a body foot? Measure 8 body feet or more in width and 32 body feet. Is that different than linear?
It's talking about the structure itself and not anything that would be
I'm talking about
attached.
the measurement.
Mm-hmm.
What's
We're not
So
counting like a
it's
pocket
feet.
that's coming off the outside. The actual structure.
It's a structure in feet.
I just, sorry, I hadn't heard it.
What
termed
is
that
the
way.
term body?
I'm sorry, Jean, could you say that again?
What does the term body contribute here that it's a new term to us?
That it's the,
What does body feet mean?
exterior of the structure. And not,
In this
not
The
context,
body
anything
of the
coming
mobile
off.
home.
in this context, you could kill body and it would be fine.
Thank you, Mark.
In other words, it would be like the body of the mobile home, and not wouldn't count an awning that stuck out or overhang or something like that, or
Right.
porches on the side. So
Exactly.
maybe it's there for a good reason.
Yeah, but this is a state definition, and honestly, they have to comply with state regs. We're just parroting it here.
Yeah. I don't
So-
think it hurts anything if we delete that.
I agree, it is confusing. I first was body feet.
Measured in bodies.
You'd have to add a new definition to the glossary.
Yeah, we don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
we're not doing that. We'll go back to using cubits or something.
Okay, so mobile home park, the only recommendation was to remove the last sentence saying may include a common storage area for recreational vehicles owned by residents only. It's a little, maybe too much information. But if someone has a reason that they want to keep that, we can consider that.
Okay.
And then also with mobile home park conversion, we can simplify this and just say changing the use of a mobile home park for a purpose other than the rental, it's missing something. Other than the rental of 2 or more mobile home sites.
What does that mean now?
So it's changing its use, so converting it to something else. For example, a permanent unit. And then shall we delete all of this extra down here that's highlighted? It's very detailed.
Are we covering it someplace else? Are we covering that someplace else?
It's in the
Somebody
zoning
wants to
code.
know.
It's all in the code.
Sounds like we can take it out then.
Okay. Okay, so this next one said mobile home, RV, and boat sales, but I think this means to say motorhome, RV, and boat sales, because I don't think you would sell a mobile home along with boats.
I
I
agree.
think you're right.
Mark caught this one.
I looked at that this morning and thought that's really strange, but
Yes. So let's change that to motorhome. Get rid of mobile home.
they said mobile home dwelling units. That's what's weird.
Yes. Yeah, I find that odd. I don't know of
Did
anyone
they
who
mean that?
sells both of those.
Could it have been somehow related with the Duplex? When they were selling, I don't know.
Yeah, and
They were selling portables.
They were
it's also
selling
an archaic term. Nobody refers to them as mobile homes any longer. They're manufactured housing or RVs essentially, but yeah, it just seems odd.
Yeah. Ramona, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, and we may just take it out, but I always wonder if it was intentional for mobile home, for establishment selling mobile homes, because wouldn't a motor home be considered an RV or recreational vehicle? So I'm just kind of wondering if it was intentional. Not saying that we need to keep it in there, but if it refers to retail establishments selling either, I mean, they don't tend to sell this all. They either tend to sell mobile homes or they tend to sell recreational vehicles, and others sell boats. So they're all kind of very distinct. I don't think most retail establishments sell all three of them.
I would go further and say that a mobile home would be even more distinct than, say, an RV, a motorhome, or a boat, which are more for recreational use.
And I don't, maybe Carol knows directly, but do we even allow mobile home sales within the town limits in the zoning code?
I think because Duplex did something very similar, that we would.
Tim?
They sell RVs there at the Duplex property. That's RV sales. That's not mobile home sales. They actually are very distinct differences between mobile homes and motorhomes and RVs. Is that being debated right now?
I think she's asking when the Duplex were manufacturing
portable
the
classroom
units that they used to make.
It was portable.
The portables.
It
which
was portable.
were used for
portable
other things
classrooms.
too.
It was definitely portable. I don't know that it was ever housing units. It was portable classrooms, portable offices,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff, as opposed to like today's manufactured homes that are being used so prevalently.
All right, so let's leave it like that and move on. If nobody
Eva,
has
did you
anything to
have a
say.
comment on that topic?
I was just wondering if it was part of the tiny home phenomena that's going on. Where would you classify a tiny home? The ones that are built on trailer beds and haulable.
Most
Are those considered single-family residences? If they're attached to a property, if they're permanently attached, either bolted or to a permanent foundation, that would be a single family, I would think, whether they're a tiny home or not.
Well, what they would, what that process would be, they are considered motor homes and they're considered part of the vehicle code. And they're not allowable for use as a single family home unless they become permanently attached to a fixture and they have to get their information turned into the state and turned into real property versus the vehicle code.
Okay, so it would be classified as a mobile home if they wanted to park it somewhere on a concrete foundation or asphalt, some type of foundation. But for the most part, I mean, all the shows that I've seen, they're usually hooked up to a trailer. Of some
Right.
sort. Okay.
At which point it's more of a travel trailer.
Okay.
On line 2, do we want to make it motor homes with an S? To fit with vehicles.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Jean. Okay, moving on. For moderate income household, let's delete the phrase for the Section 8 housing program because it can be used for other purposes.
Christy? Yeah, in that section, there's the phrase usually as established by the U.S. Department of Housing. Elsewhere in this document, we've always referenced a specific document or code or whatever with the government, but now we're saying usually. Don't you think we should have something more defined than usually? There is within the federal government, I know, an index that has what is considered a moderate income as opposed to low.
Right.
That's just my suggestion.
Isn't ours established by HCD?
Yes, but the HCD definition mirrors the federal definition. Both of them are 120% of the area median income.
Okay.
We could also point to HCD here since we do often reference HCD.
Right. Shall I say should I strike usually and then say as established by HUD or HCD?
I think that works, yeah.
Okay. I will clean that up. We can keep going. Okay. Okay, modular unit. This is kind of wordy. Do we want to pare this down a bit? Like maybe especially get rid of this.
I think it's all said in the first sentence.
Yeah. I would agree.
I didn't know that it differed from necessarily from manufactured housing.
Yeah, this is
how is it?
This is actually the future of housing, in that they will, much like they build a ship or other kind of large multi-piece building, they'll actually build pieces off-site and ship them to the site and attach them. This is how a lot of housing is being built in other parts of California and in the world. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Rather than stick building something in the field and subject to all the weather and vagaries of things that happen out there, you build it in a controlled space, you truck it to where you need to, and you lift it in place and then do the finishing there. So this is This lowers cost, lowers waste, and is actually better for the contractors. But that's what they're referring to with modular. Another example would be, although I think they're similar to mobile, is like modular classrooms and whatnot. But this modular unit piece can in fact be a multi-story building that's simply done in pieces and brought to the site.
And how is that differed from manufactured?
The manufacturer typically refers to something that's on a frame. If you go under a mobile home or a manufactured home, you'll see steel girders and whatnot that are there. Most of the modular units that I've seen look exactly like what my house looks like. It's built and then sent to the site, and then they fix all the pieces together. It was never intended to be towed, as usually has to be towed on a trailer, supported, versus the mobile stuff usually has axles and something that are temporarily affixed to the frame to send them along the road.
Down the street from me here in Sacramento, the Crocker Village development is a good example of modular. There they truck in the houses and they've got all these pre-assembled pieces and then just put up the 3,000 square foot single family homes out of those assembled pieces. So if somebody's down here in Sacramento, I encourage you to drive through Crocker Village and take a look at what that looks like, because you can see they're building dozens of houses right now, so that you can see them in all the different stages, from a pile of the walls to fully finished homes that people live in already.
So Carol, this would be like the one that was done next to the golf course, where they brought in the pieces and put them into place with the crane.
Exactly, Jean. That house was a modular home. And if you look at the ADUs that are coming in right now, which they're kind of in permit status right now, but I would say probably at least 40% of the ADU units that are coming in are modulars. And that's, I would say also that same percentage is the number of people who are calling about ADUs are asking if we allow modular homes. And that's exactly what your neighbors is a modular.
Also referred to as prefab.
Some of them even come as flat packed, like an IKEA structure.
Yep.
It's actually quite interesting. The technology has advanced quite a bit.
Okay, so I will just keep that first sentence. Then moving on, multifamily housing, again, it gets pretty detailed. Do we want to simplify this just to say a dwelling unit that's part of a structure containing more than one dwelling unit?
Makes sense. Doesn't seem like anybody's disagreeing, Christy.
Okay, moving on. Multiple family building. Do we want to just combine that? I don't know that we use that term specifically outside of saying a multifamily housing.
Maybe just do a search, see if it's in there anywhere.
I think we do use multifamily structure.
Yeah, that's why the
So maybe we just
building
change
is
this
throwing
term
me
to multifamily structure.
Okay.
And then we can decide whether multifamily is one word or two, but we should be
Yes.
consistent on that.
Yeah.
And to that, I'll defer to the English teacher in the group.
In general, if you don't need punctuation, leave it out. But either one is fine with me. If you don't need the punctuation, I tend to leave it out, but.
But do we have multifamily as one word, the way we have it for multifamily housing, or?
That's what I'll look through the document to see how we use that term, if we are hyphenating it or not, or calling it multifamily or multiple family. And then I'll update it based on that.
HCD uses a single word, so they smash it together, no hyphen. Just
As
wanna mirror that.
multifamily. Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's not gonna let me do that. But I'll just do a double check. Okay. And now in this structure, a multifamily structure, we're talking about.
Take the second,
Go ahead.
take the second F out of Emily.
Yeah, we're gonna say multifamily. It'll get cleaned up.
Okay.
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 Oh, here, I can just do this. There.
I know what you mean now.
So one question is, this is calling it as 3 or more families occupying separate suites. And then in the definition above, we're saying more than 1 dwelling unit. Do we want to say keep it as more than 1 or 3 or more?
Is there a real definition? Like, is a duplex considered multifamily? I would think
That's
so.
interesting because we have been charging ADUs at a multifamily rate. I don't know if that means anything here or not.
Well, one of the things I noted is that in the definition of multifamily up above, we include duplex, multifamily housing. And then down here, we started at triplex. And I think to be consistent, it should just be more than 1 family. Although nowadays the definition of a family, but maybe we just say more than 1 dwelling unit.
Good.
That would be consistent with our multifamily housing definition up above.
Right. Here.
In multifamily housing, we talk in terms of dwelling units. Maybe we should say a detached building design or a detached building containing more than 1 dwelling unit.
I was just going to say that, Andreas. We should shy away from using the word family because we don't want to spend the rest of our lives defining that.
Okay.
So does this mean if somebody comes in and they're building their main house with a junior ADU, that the whole thing qualifies as a multifamily unit?
No, I believe there's specific text in the state law that prevents that from being done. That was one of the mechanisms used to prevent them in single family neighborhoods. So I no.
Okay, thank you.
And this process is merely giving definitions. It's not saying what's allowable or not allowable. That's for the zoning, correct?
Absolutely.
Got it. Thanks. Good clarification.
What do I want to say here?
Detached building or structure of more than 1 dwelling unit.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, on to multi-use trail. So this is somewhat new. A trail designed to accommodate a variety of user groups such as pedestrians, cyclists, and equestrians on the same trail with 2-way non-motorized off-street access.
Does anybody know if e-bikes are considered non-motorized?
Well, if you go to the American River Bike Trails, they now have it listed where they say that almost that same definition of what's allowed on there. And they give e-vehicles a classification, and they say only class 1 or 2 e-bike or whatever that is allowed.
Yeah, the e-bikes are classified based on their top speed.
Right. And so only like if you go up near, say, Beals Point, it only allows a class 1 or 2 e-vehicle.
Will we get in trouble if we just say non-motorized? Because e-bikes are a thing, particularly as people
Right.
they're a lot of fun. Anyway, just a thought. And maybe it's not a non-issue.
It's a whole lot easier when they're not on the trail with you, I'll tell you that.
Here, I would argue, I mean, I would want e-bikes allowed on those trails. There are different kinds of e-bikes. There are some that are not, they're motor assist, so therefore they do not work unless you pedal them. The other ones are like, the only company I know of is Rad Bike, and those, in essence, you can just turn the motor on and stop pedaling. There probably are other competitors, but I consider those two totally separate types of vehicles. So
yeah, that's what, like I said, that's what they do on the bike trails. They have their, because they go with that classification, and only you will know what vehicle you have and what's classified as when you buy it.
Do you want to make a distinction?
Maybe we can just post a sign at the time and not have to make a general plan change.
Yeah, Christy, I'll email you the classification system, and it's exactly as indicated. I mean, low speed, class 1 is a low speed pedal assist, and it has a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour. A class 2 is a low speed throttle, which is what was just described. It also has a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour. A class 3 is essentially 28 miles an hour and up. And some of them now are essentially motorcycles, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But I can send this to you, and it sounds like a class 1 or 2 would be acceptable to the committee, but class 3 would not be.
Okay, so maybe I can just add a little qualifying sentence after this one on those classifications.
Here, I'll put it in chat for everybody. There we go. I just put it in chat, Christy.
Okay.
That was my only thought on that.
Okay. Okay, moving on. We have any comments on must through necessary?
Looks good to me.
Okay, so on need, we can simplify this by getting rid of that last sentence because that's not really necessary. Just leave it as a condition requiring supply or relief. We don't need to talk about if the town will act upon those. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think just if anybody disagrees with anything, just, we'll go on that assumption. So go for it, Christy. If you don't hear anything, just keep moving on.
Under neighborhood park, I don't know why there's a 1/2 mile radius from the park.
So this is an existing definition. We can alter it.
Okay, well, I mean,
I agree.
If everybody's okay with that.
I mean, usually you want to have a park when it's considered a neighborhood park, something that people can walk to.
And that's the one why it says 1/2 mile.
Okay.
Right. So are you okay with leaving that as 1/2 mile?
Maybe put in there usually within.
Okay.
You get a little flexibility.
If it pleases the committee, the Recreation Committee has an action plan to have us prepare a parks master plan. And, we may end up having to modify definitions anyway, based on what comes out of that effort following the general plan update. But that makes a fine half stop between those.
Okay.
Nightclub.
Oh,
Wow.
exciting.
More exciting than these definitions, right? So one other change you'll see in noise attenuation is just to simplify this. It gets a little bit complex. Just saying reduction of noise using a substance, material, or surface. Instead of talking about acoustic signals, which could be confusing to somebody.
Okay.
And then going down to non-conforming parcel. We can simplify this with just requiring compliance with the existing requirements instead of listing those out. These are all in the code. So things like your area or your lot dimensions are in your code. And the same on non-conforming structure. We can simplify that and just reference requirements instead of setbacks and height limits. Those are all items in the code.
So since we're in the general plan, I don't know that I like the requirements of this title. I would
Title,
maybe
I
make it
know.
more broad and say something like with all applicable requirements.
Yeah.
Does not
Okay.
comply with applicable requirements.
Yeah. And I'll clean that one up too. Okay. So non-conforming use, do we want to simplify this? This gets into a lot of detail. This is in the zoning code definitions.
Looks good.
You have Greg?
Yeah, the only thing I keep thinking is in all of those statements, right before requirements, I would still leave the word current in there
Okay.
and just give a little extra help to that
Yeah,
definition.
good idea.
Yeah, now you struck, and the other statements where those huge sections you struck out, it started with current. So, but just leave current and strike out everything else.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Well, okay, consistent with the requirement of this title, I would say with the current requirement of this title.
Okay.
I think it would kind
Here.
of help, yeah, right there.
Got it.
And that would be the same for the above definitions as well. I should have
Yeah,
put
I've
that.
unstruck those.
Okay.
Well, we probably could just say with current requirements, period.
Yes, we can strike this. Okay. Moving on to non-prime agricultural land. I think when we're talking about the rating system from the Soil Conservation Service, that gets into all sorts of factors and criteria. So it might be more understandable if we just say property used for the production of food or fiber with soils that do not meet soil criteria to be classified as prime, unique, or of state or local importance. Does that make more sense?
Sure.
Okay. Now, nuisance. This will probably get some.
If somebody needs to know that, if somebody on the soil, if somebody needs to know that for application for something, they're going to find it out some other way, I presume, to
Yeah.
know that.
We don't,
Yeah.
we don't usually use the classifications for that.
We don't need to worry about that here.
No.
No.
And, the state keeps track of all that, and there's a state definition that we rely on for that.
Okay.
A good thought. Nuisance.
Okay.
I don't see the word. I don't see the word editing a glossary in there anymore.
I'll add that in right here after junk accumulation. Okay, so this has all sorts of information in it. A person, thing, or circumstance causing inconvenience or annoyance. And then we go into a little more detail. A nuisance involves an unreasonable or unlawful use of property that results in material annoyance, inconvenience, discomfort, or injury to another person or to the public. The unlawful use may involve doing something or failing to do something. Common nuisances may include junk accumulation, animals, repetitive noise, dangerous buildings, sewage and unsanitary conditions, and encroachments on the public right-of-way that interfere with pedestrian passage. Do you want that level of detail, or?
We have a hand up. Eva?
Well, I mean, I think the definition is fine. There is a spot, and I don't know if it's the general plan or the code, where it says acceptable. Oh, I don't have it written in front of me. I guess the one thing that I've been kind of after is, how is that nuisance defined? For me, it was the sound ordinances, but the sound regulations, but that is still a nuisance that is beyond, what's measurable. And I don't know if that will get addressed in the zoning, or how that gets defined here. I guess I want to know the appropriate place to voice my concerns about it.
That's a really good point. Something that doesn't necessarily trip a noise threshold like 70 dB can still be annoying as hell at 2 a.m. if it's thumping up and down, even if it's just moderately there, but it doesn't trip any thresholds. And then the town is in this awkward position where, in order to be regulated or order to cite somebody, it has to trip some sort of threshold. So I think you're absolutely right to bring it up. And I think we start here with this discussion of nuisance, but ultimately it needs to be reflected in both the noise element and finally in the noise ordinance of the town. So unfortunately, it's not a one and done. You'll need to kind of follow this through to make sure it gets done. But it's unfortunately this weird little gulf between what we measure in terms of a threshold or something that we find significant and something that's just annoying and becomes a nuisance. Think of it like the fluorescent light hum when we used to have fluorescent lights. You didn't notice that it was there until you turned it off. And I would put to you that you'll need to pay attention to that sort of thing, particularly in the industrial uses at the north end of town. But I would start with this definition and make sure it reads how you like, and then you'll have to follow it through the rest of the process.
Yeah, I think the only thing really missing from that definition is on a continuing basis. So if you put a person, thing, or circumstances causing inconvenience or annoyance on a continuing basis. I think
I like that a lot. That's a pretty good add. Yeah.
That is good.
Excuse me, one-time occurrence is not a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go.
Score.
It's a good distinction.
Wait.
Thank you. I'll follow it through to zoning.
Well thought out.
Yeah, Eva, zoning is the pointy end of the stick on all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're spending the time on this. So I really do encourage you to follow it through and bird dog that.
What does this sentence mean? The unlawful use may involve doing something or failing to do something. What unlawful use?
I think
I don't understand that sentence. I understand why somebody wanted to put it in there because it's an act or failing to act, but I don't understand it as a standalone sentence.
Couldn't that just be the nuisance?
yes. Well, is the
So
new
yeah, so
yeah,
it should
yeah.
say the nuisance may involve doing something or failing to do something. Yeah.
I think, I don't know if this stems from, out more in the rural areas where they're, maybe roasting pigs or, slaughtering animals or things like that. I remember that being an issue for someone that I know. And it technically was unlawful in the area that she was in. And there was the nuisance of odors and things of burning. Some of these fires, bonfires that are done, I don't know, I'm just throwing out my 2 cents on that. So you throw an old couch on a bonfire and you're going to have fumes and odors and things. And that I think might be something that's unlawful to do when you're, disposing of things illegally.
Should we put odor in there? Because
Well, we have sewage and unsanitary conditions. I don't know if that's broad enough to cover that.
I think that would be a good add. Odor would be.
Yeah, it's not the same as unsanitary conditions.
Andreas, is any of this giving you goosebumps?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's fair to specifically call out odor, noise, and light as nuisance, as examples of nuisances, things that could potentially cause a nuisance.
lights is not in
Light's
there.
not in there.
Yeah.
Lighting.
More than once, I wanted to take a BB gun and turn off one of my neighbor's lights. Oh wait,
If we want to get really specific, we can also say air quality. If you've got some kind of use that's causing poor air quality in a specific area, but I think we're getting pretty detailed here.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to go there, I'd probably go with dust, but air quality works too.
Not with all these rural dirt roads.
Air emissions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking mainly if somebody sets up a BMX track on the back part of their lot and annoys the dickens out of the neighbors. That's all.
Are some of these may run into conflict with right to farm.
Yeah, and then we would have to call that out in the nuisance or the abatement piece of the zoning code. Because you would typically say, except for agricultural uses as permitted by the right to farm.
But even there, you're going to be restricted in how you do your farming to some extent, that you're not creating a nuisance in how you're going about your lawful use.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain do's and don'ts in farming where you can mitigate odor.
Well, my neighbor can lawfully have 2 donkeys on his property and I can find it an annoying nuisance, but
yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned by saying including junk accumulation because I feel like that's super subjective. My artwork or whatever, somebody's sculptures might be considered somebody else's junk. And animals, I don't know. Those two are weird to me.
The junk accumulate. This is Sean. The junk accumulation is a serious problem throughout, well, not throughout all of town, but there are several properties that we have continuing code enforcement compliance issues with because of junk accumulation. It's actually like called junk.
It is called junk. We have a definition for junk, not
Yeah.
like garbage.
Yeah, it specifically says junk.
But wouldn't those come under the definition of violation rather than nuisance?
I'm sorry.
We remediate
Except when
them
you're
through
dealing
nuisance
with
abatement, so we would want to define them as a nuisance.
We don't have junk in the,
There's no definition of junk.
no.
It's called junk in our ordinances, though. I believe. I'm pretty
We
sure.
should add a new definition for junk.
Is trash listed in the ordinance? 'Cause junk
It's
could
not
be
just trash, though. It's trash, wrecked cars. Wrecked cars aren't trash, right? Boats that are been sitting for years and falling apart, those aren't trash.
Okay.
It's junk. I don't know if you need to put all of this, like, do we need all these common nuisances listed, or is there a way to, like,
Right. That's
it's
my
getting,
question.
yeah, it
And
seems
what-
like there should be a way to,
And when you put the word common in there, that doesn't restrict it to just what's in the definition. That opens it up to interpretation to add more examples. Right.
or I'm wondering if you just say, prohibited nuisances are included in the town's municipal code or section, blah, 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 blah. Leave it at that. Don't put all this stuff in here.
Well, there's always going to be dispute between parties as to what is someone's nuisance and junk and such. So I think this is pretty darn comprehensive. It gives the right direction to anybody who wants to look into it. And frankly, if it truly is a nuisance, oftentimes it's going to end up in the sheriff's substation and as a complaint. And that may happen also. So I think this is sufficient. That's my opinion.
Then we just have to decide if we keep junk in there.
Yeah, junk isn't defined in our zoning code or here.
But I think Sean's right. It needs to be mentioned somehow, somewhere, because that's probably, of all these things, that's probably the most common problem.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, my neighbor has a huge pile of, his whole entire 3 acres is filled with junk, but it's without it being defined, it's completely open to subjective interpretation. And I could also say that the neighbor on my other side, sculpture is considered junk,
There you go.
Yeah. All right, so do we leave junk in
So
and
it
then,
may depend on whether it's causing a problem. Is it unsanitary, for instance? Is it a fire hazard? Those kinds of things. Then it becomes more of a problem than just because you don't agree with his artwork.
Under the ordinance, in the municipal code, it's Title 7, it's Chapter 7.04.010. Nuisance is declared. Letter D is packing boxes, lumber, junk, trash, salvage materials, or other debris kept on the property. So it shows up there. It shows up in exceptions under a junk dealer under 8.04. It shows up in section 13.42 in the zoning code.
There you go.
And it shows up again in 13.30. It's all over our municipal code. So I'm saying if we're going to keep all that stuff in the definitions, then junk needs to stay in the definitions because it's all through our stuff. And that's one of the common things that we cite. In fact, it's the most common thing that we cite when we're doing code enforcement is accumulation of junk and debris.
okay, so let's define junk then.
Perfect.
Okay, folks, I need to check out. I have an appointment at 5 o'clock. So Mary's going to finish. And if there's something we need to close out, Mary will do that for us.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Or do we just say debris?
I was going with like junk, trash, inoperable vehicles, you know, I don't know.
You know, I would get away from trying to define everything, because when you have the word common in there, that implies that there are also uncommon nuisances, which can be defined later at a hearing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, 7.04.010 nuisance declared. It has A through I that list what a nuisance is.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we just truncate this and just say a person, thing, or circumstance causing inconvenience or annoyance on a continuing basis, period.
Mm-hmm.
And let the code define everything else, because I think we're getting quickly into regulation, and I'm a little nervous that we're not going to catch everything, and then we'll
Right.
have a conflict.
Right. So shall we strike this part?
Everybody in agreement on that?
So are we, do we want to keep the prohibited, do we keep the prohibited uses statement, or does that need to go also?
I think you should keep that at the end.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. In fact, the more links, the better. And then, Christy, I'd make a note that we need to make sure that all of the things listed in the definition here for common nuisances actually do appear in that section of the code. I think they do, but and then we may have to add a definition. If we're using junk and we don't define it anywhere, that seems to be a flaw that Andreas would not be happy with.
Okay.
All right, and it looks like it's 5 o'clock, folks. Ending on nuisance. And then we'll pick it up with junk.
We'll pick it up with objective. We'll move on to the O's. How about that?
So we'll move on to the O's next time. And
Yeah.
when will that be, Mary Beth?
That's for up to the committee to decide. You know, I had requested that we could do 2 meetings a week, or if you would entertain a 3-hour meeting. 3 hours under this kind of topic is a little grueling. So today being Thursday the 4th, we'd look to next week. The days not available next, well, we could do it on November 9th. There's a town council meeting. Thursday, the 11th, is a Veterans Day holiday. So if we're going between the 3 and 5 o'clock time frame, any day next week except Thursday would be acceptable. And I don't think anybody likes Fridays, so.
And I cannot do Monday.
Okay,
I can't do Tuesday.
okay. So that leaves Wednesday.
So does Wednesday, November 10th at 3 o'clock work for everybody?
Yes, we're me.
I won't be available, but
You
I
won't
don't
be?
really count. It doesn't matter.
And I won't be either, but I can talk with Christy and Andy ahead of time and have my thoughts there. So I'd hate to, yeah.
Well, if you can't be there, you're our lead guy, Mark.
I am, but this is Christy's glossary.
Sorry, Christy. Didn't mean to usurp your hierarchy there, but.
What I did last time, Chair, was I sent Christy my comments, and I can do that again. And so
Okay.
she was able to incorporate all of those.
Okay. So it sounds like then Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Okay.
Great, thank you all. And then at the end of that meeting, we'll figure out the next meeting. So we'll just kind of leapfrog this until we get on to our next topics.
When do we start discussing the results from the subcommittees? After the
That'll-
glossary?
After the glossary.
Okay.
Yes, because a lot of those have changes to some of the glossaries too. So it's kind of you have to come back and do a little bit of reconciliation. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So is everybody all right? We're going to go ahead and adjourn unless there's any other comments from the committee or the public.
I have a request, maybe along with what Greg or somebody was just saying about the effect of the other subcommittees on the glossary. And I think one of the things we'll need to come to next time is the definition of open space, because the one that's in there is basically the one I think from Parks and Rec. However, throughout the general plan, we have other uses of the term open space that are broader than that. So we're probably going to need to look at that and figure out how we're going to do that, if anybody wants to look at that a little ahead of time.
Okay.
Good
Thank you,
point.
Jean. All right, everybody is ready to adjourn. Let's go ahead and adjourn at 5:05.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Good work.